My name is Pete Bullimore. I'm a voice hearer, but I'm not just a voice hearer. I'm proud to say I'm a voice hearer. They're my experiences and I own them. I spent nearly 10 years in the psychiatric system, often forced to be detained under the Mental Health Act. When I first went into the system, I was told by a consultant psychiatrist, he said, "Mr. Bullimore, you are a chronic schizophrenic. You will never, ever work again. Go away and enjoy your life." I was thinking, how does that actually work? But I'm now out of the mental health system. I've thrown my diagnosis away because I don't believe in the concept of schizophrenia. Because there never has, and there never will be any scientific validity for that diagnosis. I'm quite happy to say that I'm a voice hearer. But I'm part of the Hearing Voices movement. I also run an organisation called Asylum Associates, which offers training, consultancy, we set up conferences. I'm the founder member of the Paranoia network in England. I do a lot of work with people, usually people who've been told that they can't recover. On average, 70 to 80 hours a week, travelling around the world, living in teaching on hearing voices, paranoia and childhood trauma. It goes to show recovery is possible and psychiatry can be wrong. And it's great to be here today working with Melissa Roberts Foundation because they do some amazing work. We want to look at what is paranoia and how we can decode beliefs and make sense of it from another person's perspective. So it's going to be module 1 of 5. The MRF offers a series of online training modules around the experience of hearing voices and paranoia. So today we're looking at what paranoia is. We're going to look at the history of paranoia. The word paranoia was coined by Hippocrates, who was a founder of medicine. He defined the experience when people had a very, very high temperature. He did this by putting the Greek words together, para, which means beside, and nous, which means mind. Now let's look at this again because this is very, very important. It's basing this on a very high temperature. So it tells us something very, very important. I'm sure a lot of people watching this video will have had a high temperature. Reflect on that. Have you still got a high temperature? No, you probably haven't. It comes and it goes. There is a misconception that paranoia is always on a continuum. It isn't. When working with people that experience paranoia, what you have to do is you've got to separate all the experiences out. Because not all of them are on a continuum. You may have one on a continuum. What you've got to identify is how many episodes of paranoia there's been and who or what influenced each episode. It's very, very important, very, very important. So when we look at what paranoia itself, it's not a disorder itself, but maybe featuring in other disorders. It could be normal based upon the context. A feeling or emotion that may have a seed of truth or be entirely true. Now, what you're going to hear me say quite a lot during these videos is you're going to hear some very, very complex beliefs. Very, very complex beliefs. But there is always, always a seed of truth. It does not come from nowhere. We have to find that seed of truth to understand how we can start to support that person with what can be very complex experiences at times. We're talking about making assumptions about paranoia. Paranoia can be seen in various ways. Delusions, unusual beliefs, alternative sense of reality, heightened sensitive or response to past trauma. Now, how we view this will understand how the person is viewing their experiences. Now, I don't particularly like the word delusion. It's very dismissive. It blames the person. It tells them they've got an illness. You might see two people having an argument in a bar and they'll say, "Oh, you're just delusional, go away." It's very, very dismissive. You know, and unusual beliefs. Everybody's going to have some beliefs that other people find unusual. It's very, very common, very, very common. Alternative sense of reality. I will have an alternative sense of reality of how I view things in people's lives and how people behave in society as well. This is a really important one, heightened sensitivity response to past trauma. These very, very much interlink. I can relate this from a personal experience. I have a very heightened sense of awareness because of a traumatic experience that happened in my lives. Now, we see this always quite often as being a negative. I see it as a positive. A lot of people that's been through traumatic experience have a heightened sense of awareness. They're able to spot danger very, very quickly. So that's not always a negative, that can be a positive. But it's important how we view them to understand the person's experiences from their perspective. When you're working with paranoia or complex beliefs, if you try to see them through your eyes, you will never, ever understand them. You've got to see them through the other person's eyes. It's very, very important, very important. But look at the role of assumptions. Different approaches to paranoia are based on specific assumptions. These assumptions influence how we interpret the cause, how we respond to those experiences. Now, if mine is just seen as delusions, I'll probably be given large doses of medication and dismissed. If we see it as a reaction to what's happened in a person's life, we should be talking about reactions, not symptoms. When we look at the words, the terminology, we dismiss people's lives. We talk about post-traumatic stress disorder. Why is the word disorder on there? You've come back from a war zone, you've seen your friend be killed. That is a reaction, that is not a disorder. Let's not pathologise people. Let's normalise that experience, that's the important thing. They're responses, they're not diagnoses. We've got a multifaceted approach. Keeping a range of perspective in mind is crucial. Different explanations offer unique insights into addressing paranoia. You've got to keep that open. Ask the person what they mean by their experience and we start to make sense of it. The Paranoia Network's contribution is inspired by event philosophy. Paranoia Network emphasises the value of diverse explanations, providing space for different approaches. It was founded during the 2004 conference in Manchester. Now what we did, we looked at the influence of the Hearing Voices movement. They have a diversity of different explanations for people's experiences so they can make sense of them. And that's what we have to do when looking at that. We all have different ideas of what creates these experiences, but if it's positive for the person, we should leave them alone. Alternative ways of working, the key principles. Human rights. People should be free to believe whatever they want, as long as they're not hurting themselves or others. Those who are distressed by their beliefs, focus on the fit between their beliefs and the life they wish to lead, rather than necessarily changing the belief itself. This is very, very important. People are going to hear some very, very complex belief systems. Now, if you don't understand them, don't collude. You're going to get drawn into a world that you don't understand. But don't dismiss. Just say, I don't share your beliefs, but what do they mean to you? It's what we call the fit. It's how they are making sense of what at times can be a very, very confusing reality. But paranoia is a perception of alternative reality. A paranoid belief can be viewed as a legitimate perspective or heightened awareness and sensitive to others' reactions reflecting natural variation human experience similar to hearing voices. Now, we're all going to be different as human beings. Some people hear voices, some people won't. Some people will be left-handed, people won't. We have a variation of experience in people's lives. But the pros, paranoia's response to past victimisation, provides a safe, non-judgmental space to share and make sense of experience like-minded people, helps individuals develop a narrative to understand their journey from past to present, connects feelings and experiences to power dynamics breaking down powerlessness and isolation. Now, the safe, non-judgmental atmosphere is very, very important. There are so many people in psychiatric services today that do not know other people experience hearing voices or paranoia. I spent nearly 10 years on psychiatric wards. I never met anyone else with the same experiences as me. They were there. You weren't encouraged to talk about it, you were discouraged. I know the first time I ever went to a support group for people hearing voices and experiencing paranoia, I was homeless at the time. I'd become the archetypical schizophrenic. I didn't wash, I didn't shave, I was scruffy. And it was a social worker. He said to me, would you like to go to a support group where other people have similar experiences to you? And I said, well, no one else does. Why would I go there? Now this guy didn't push me, encourage me. And I remember walking into this room. There was 10 other people there. And the thing that really shocked me was they were all smart and presentable. And my first thoughts were, well, he can't be schizo, he should be scruffy like me. And they started to share their experiences. It is one of the most liberating experiences I've ever had in my life. I can take this mask off I've been wearing for years. I'm no longer alone with these experiences. It just breaks down so much social isolation. Helps individuals develop a narrative to understand their journey from past to present. Understanding why someone's in psychiatric care is so important. In our services today in the Western world, if we don't ask someone about their narrative when they come into psychiatric care, this is today. On average, the time it takes someone to disclose, if not asked, today is 16 years. That is a long time out of someone's life. If I was to say to someone today, give me the next 16 years of your life, and in 16 years' time I'm not giving them you back, you'll be very, very reluctant. What we know from the research is everyone wants to be asked. Not everyone wants to disclose, but everybody does want to be heard when they are ready to disclose. We need to know why people are in psychiatric care. There's some great research done by Professor of Psychology, Professor John Reid, at the University of East London, and his research is phenomenal. And he looks at adverse childhood experiences. Now, this is what can happen in childhood. It can be It's not all about sexual and physical abuse. I mean, bullying at school, loss of a cherished pet, loss of a parent, never putting down roots. It can be many forms. If you experience 3 of those in childhood, you are 19 times more likely to get a diagnosis of schizophrenia. 19 times. If you experience 5 of those, which is not uncommon, you are 192 times more likely to get a diagnosis of schizophrenia. The evidence is out there. We're still hiding behind the biogenetic approaches. But the cons. Paranoia is a response to past victimisation. It's not known whether all those who have experienced paranoia have been victimised. People may not be ready to discuss past events. Handled badly, discussions can leave the person re-traumatised. This is very important. If you are going to ask someone about their lives, you've got to act. If you're not going to act, don't ask. Get a case of classic re-traumatisation. Let's say you've got a young girl, 6 years old, and she says, "Mum, my stepfather does things to me and I don't like it." And the mother says, "Don't be silly, he wouldn't do that." It becomes a 6-year-old's fault. She's now 36 and she's in psychiatric care, and a worker approaches her and says, "Could you tell me a little bit about your childhood?" "Well, when I was 6 years old, my stepfather sexually abused me." "Okay, thank you for telling me," and walks away. Classic re-traumatisation. "I've told twice, nobody's done anything, it must be my fault." But for a lot of workers, they'll have been through this, or they may go through it. Same scenario, same lady, but she approaches the worker. "Could I tell you something about my childhood? When I was 6 years old, my stepfather sexually abused me." Out of everyone involved in her care, she's chosen that person to tell, and there's a reason for that. They've earned her trust. You cannot assume trust, you have to earn trust, and it's important that the worker holds that trust. It's very important. I've worked with a lot of female survivors of abuse and incest, and I get a lot of disclosures. Upon disclosure, the first question I ask is, have you told anyone about this before? If a trauma history has been taken, you don't always have to retake it, but quite often they'll say, "No, I haven't." So I say, "Well, I feel very privileged you've chosen me to tell. Would you like me to do anything with it?" They might say, "No, but do you believe me, Pete?" They want the validation, that's all they want. But for other people, they might say, "Yes, I do want you to do something with it." Now, we all work in different roles. It might be something the worker doesn't deal with, but don't worry about that. Just go back to the trust. "I feel very privileged you've chosen me to tell. It isn't something that I work with, but I don't want to leave you with it. Will you allow me to find someone within our organisation or an external body like Rape Crisis, but I'll support you while you go through the process." It's very important we get to that point that we don't lose them. It's very important. But if you look at the established view of paranoia, paranoia is an unfounded or exaggerated distrust of others, sometimes reached in delusional proportions. Paranoid individuals constantly suspect the motives of those around them, believe that certain individuals or people in general are out to get them, a continuum of suspiciousness. Now, there's something really wrong with this statement, and that is, it's not always unfounded or delusional. There's always a seed of truth in there. That's what we need to find. It's very important. But paranoid perceptions and behaviours can occur in various mental illnesses, including depression and dementia. This is a quote from the DSM, Psychiatric's Big Book of Fairy Tales. They're most prominent: paranoid schizophrenia, delusional disorder, persecutory type, and paranoid personality disorder. Now, what we're doing here, we are immediately pathologising. We're not looking at the evidence. Straight away we're going for the pathology. But form a relation providing safety and approach with care. Avoid dismissive language such as delusions. It's very dismissive of the person's experience. Recognise their experience are real without confirming their beliefs. Don't collude. You might get drawn into a world that you don't understand. Emphasise their emotions behind their experiences. You know, the biggest powerful emotion we've got in paranoia is fear. We don't have a more powerful emotion than fear. Look at voices, paranoia, anxiety, panic. Without fear, you haven't got a problem. So you have to understand what's creating the fears in that person's life. Use tact and sensitive when disagreeing. Just say, "Look, I don't share your beliefs, but what do they mean to you?" It's only what the fit means for them. But building trust, reliable and honest. Avoid patronising attitudes. Don't collude into something you don't understand. Develop strong interpersonal skills, an appropriate personal disclosure. Now, I know a lot of people have got personal boundaries, but if you look at all the recovery narratives that are out there, someone always says someone told me a little bit about themselves. I can remember this. It was an occupational therapist that really helped me. She told me about some issues that happened in her life, and my first thoughts were, "You're real like me. You've got feelings and emotions." But it breaks down all those social barriers. Be prepared to tactfully withdraw if needed. Don't get drawn into logheads about who's right and who's wrong on this. And create a safe environment. Provide a space where the person feels safe and supported. This is really, really important. We talk very much about safe housing. Housing is very, very important to people. It's got to be safe. I don't care how good the therapist is. If you send someone back to an unsafe environment, you're completely wasting your time. But for some people, it's not about safe housing. For some people, they feel safer on the streets. So when we start to engage with people, we've got to find that place of safety where they want to engage. It's very important. Address emotional impact of experiences, not just symptoms. Again, we talk about, I look beyond the word symptom. These are reactions, not symptoms. Acknowledge the lack of consideration given to power dynamics in mental health treatment. This is very, very important. The number of times when I was in psychiatric care, I've tried to tell psychiatrists about my life. Now, I'm not criticising all psychiatrists, good and bad in every profession. But some of them will say, Peter, we've heard all this before, it's part of your illness. We'll put your medication up. So all that meant to me was, well, people that hurt me in my life, are you associated with them? So we can't work and build a strong working relationship. But understanding your paranoia, its causes. I suppose to focus on 1 or 2 recent episodes of paranoia. Explore the roots, including life events, emotions, stress and anxiety and social interactions. Understanding the cause helps reduce the paranoia's panic. And it's important, once we know what it's about, if we start to make sense from that person's experiences. The next module is trauma and paranoia. I explain the link between trauma and paranoia. Now, after viewing this video, if you feel you require assistance or support, please contact Lifeline's 24-hour support line. There's 131114. Now, that's the support line in Australia. You may be in a different country. In England, with the Samaritans, different countries with different support lines. Please see if you can find a support line if you do need support. It's very, very important because you're doing some very difficult things. Or you could contact your mental health practitioner or a family member or friend. There are support services out there that we can use. Thank you for taking time to watch this. I hope you find this really helpful, and I hope you'll watch the continuing ones that are going to come after this one. Again, thank you very much.